and welcome to the CloudBolt 2023.3 release updates video. My name is Mike Bombard. I'm one of the principal cloud architects here on the pre-sale side of the house. And today we're going to be covering some updates in the 2023.3 version of CloudBolt. So there are a number of release notes that are out there available on our website. We're going to go ahead and kind of go through each of these. In this outline, you'll notice some of these are in light blue font. I'm not going to talk through these because we're actually going to do a live demo here in just a few minutes where we'll go through each of these individually. But the darker fonts, I can't tell if that's navy or black, those fonts, we're going to go through each of those and talk through them just quickly and what that means to you as a customer. So let's go ahead and get started. The Enterprise Linux 8 support is now fully GA in 2023.3. So one of the big things here that I'm highlighting is that Enterprise Linux 7, so if you're leveraging CentOS 7 or RHEL 7 under the covers, as well as the MySQL database, the last supported release for both of these will be the September 2023 release of CloudBolt. So you want to start your planning for migration off of those older systems. We have documentation to cover the migration process for both the database migration to Postgres, as well as the operating system migration over to Enterprise Linux 8. So those are both included as part of our documentation. We also have Azure updates that are getting packaged into this version. The first of these is the Azure SDK is updated to the very latest version available. This allows you as an end customer to take advantage of the most recent up-to-date APIs that Azure has available. One of the things that I will point out here is that you will want to run the custom code analysis tool from CloudBolt prior to going through any upgrade process with the system. The custom code analysis tool helps you identify any changes that have been made as far as like the SDK layer is concerned. So if you've built any automation where you're calling those Azure SDKs, the custom code analysis tool will help to draw some attention to those so that you can take a look at the APIs and ensure that what you've written is still applicable in the next version of CloudBolt. And we'll have a link to that here towards the end of the slide deck. The next thing to call out here is that Azure VM Guest OS patching is now available in 2023.3. So this is an added capability so that you can execute guest patches and offer that as self-service in CloudBolt. From a blueprint perspective, there are some new APIs available. Since these are under the covers, we're not going to show those in the demonstration, but there are some new APIs available for both creating and refreshing blueprints from remote source. This would allow you to send a single API call that would point at a remote source URL and create a new blueprint leveraging that remote source content, allowing you to use your Git strategy for your organization so that you can automate that process better. The next piece for blueprints, custom form configurations are now stored with blueprints in remote source. So when you leverage custom forms in CloudBolt, there is a JSON configuration file that defines what that custom form should look like and how it should behave. That custom form has been included as part of the export process when you're exporting blueprints, as well as when you're targeting a remote source control. It will pull in that JSON configuration file and automatically set that blueprint up to use the custom form configuration when those are in use. There is a new resource handler available for bare metal provisioning, MetalSoft. So if you're using MetalSoft inside of your organization, take a look at the documentation for that. A couple of miscellaneous updates, and well, let's go back to admin. For the admin page in CloudBolt, there's a little bit of an updated look and feel. We'll cover that in the demonstration, as well as a couple of other different types of features that are available that we'll get into in the demo, as well as when we start looking at miscellaneous things that were included in this release. Server actions can now be run synchronously with the API. What that means is you can make an API call to a server action and not have it return until that action is completed with the response from that action. Ansible playbooks can also be executed with a custom inventory file, and there's more information regarding this in our release notes. We're also going to have 2 additional separate videos, and these are for larger feature releases that are being put out with 2023.3. The first of these is the consumer or the customer user interface There have been a lot of updates there. We're going to have a separate video covering all of those updates, as well as our version 3 of Terraform support in CloudBolt is being released in a beta format in this release. So we'll have 2 additional videos in the coming weeks to cover those updates, just to go into those in a little more depth to show what we've been working with under the covers in CloudBolt. Finally, some notable documentation. Here's some links to some of the documentation that you might want to use. Number 1 is that migration path from CentOS to Enterprise Linux 8. And I did not put the MySQL to Postgres migration in here. That article's been out here for probably the better part of 8 to 12 months now. So that's been in our documentation for some time. You can just search the documentation. It's pretty easy to find. The second documentation is that custom code analysis tool that we talked through. So these 2 links should be helpful in your migration and upgrade journey. All right, so the first feature that we're going to cover off in this video is going to be the ability, as part of an Azure environment, to import parameters without having to reset the entire environment. So previous versions of CloudBolt, let's kind of talk about this. We only had this import parameters from Azure option, which meant if I removed the ability for an end customer to select an availability zone, maybe I also want to remove the ability to create a public IP address, and I can custom tailor these environments to constrain what the users have access to. A lot of times we'll also constrain the instance or the node sizes that are available to customers inside of the CloudBolt system. So I might select maybe only like the standard B series of node types inside of Azure. The user can then, when they select this environment for deployment, they're constrained as far as what node sizes are available to them. Part of the challenge in the previous version of CloudBolt is that if we imported parameters from Azure, what this does is it goes out and imports all of the available parameters. So it resets everything. But if I wanted to refresh just my node sizes or bring in a parameter that we'd already previously removed from the environment, we wouldn't be able to do that. So if I refresh, we'll see those changes, those modifications that have been made are already back. And sometimes, we spend a lot of time as administrators tailoring each of these environments for a specific use case. It's kind of a pain to have to reset that just to get my node sizes back into the blueprint. So now in the newer version of CloudBolt, what we can do is, versus refreshing everything, I'm just going to select some sizes here. But instead of me having to go back and re-import everything and delete the fields I don't want and reset the ones that I did, part of what I can do is I can import removed parameters from Azure, and this will show a list of parameters that have been removed that are no longer available. Notice availability set was removed. I meant to create a public IP address as well. Let's just remove that as well. Maybe we remove a couple more, like custom storage account and accelerated networking. Again, this is really just to take that choice away from the end user. It allows us to predefine that they don't have any control over it. So we could either set an option for it or just remove it from the environment altogether. But when we go to import removed parameters, now I can say maybe we want to allow the user to create a public IP address. We can add that option back into the environment, therefore reflecting it inside of the form, without having to pull in all of my parameters and resetting these node sizes or other important information. Another handy one would be maybe Azure Resource Group. If we've added some new Azure resource groups we want the end user to have some access to, but we've already reset this option. If you notice, if I go to my resource group here, it does show all of the options here still. Oh, you know what? That would be the instance, is if we added a new resource group in Azure, it's not going to show as in the options list there. Or if Azure adds new node sizes that we want to take advantage of, this button now is available for all of the parameters inside of Azure now, so that we can independently and individually import all of the latest options from the Azure Resource Handler for this specific parameter. So in the case of resource group, I could select that. This is going to reach out to Azure, pull all of the options back in. I can then reset this to what I want my end user to be able to select at the time of deployment. So a couple of really handy features that just make management and environment creation and management and maintenance a lot simpler for our customers. The next enhancement that we're going to cover is leveraging or the ability to add parameters for non-resource creating blueprints. And what I mean by that, I'm in an older instance of CloudBolt. This is the last release. If I go into even just my custom server blueprint, but really any blueprint that doesn't have a resource type defined. A resource type in CloudBolt means that we're going to take the output of a blueprint and store it as an object in the CloudBolt database. There are really two instances that you might have a blueprint that doesn't have a defined output resource type. One of them is going to be for provisioning standalone servers. So it could be one or more servers that are all going to be managed independently of one another. The other use case would be administrative level templates. So those would be maybe tasks that you have included in your service catalog to do repeatable administrative kinds of items, or other kinds of services that may not actually create something. It just gives your user a self-service way to do some kind of task inside of the environment. In that case, we don't really need a resource type here. And what we ran into, notice there's no parameters tab here. Whenever the resource type wasn't set, we didn't enable blueprint level parameters to be added to a non-resource creating blueprint. And really what happens without that is we're unable to set parameters at the blueprint level in the place that it makes the most sense. But in the newest version of CloudBolt, if we go over to the custom server blueprint in this instance, you'll see that we now have a parameters tab available. And what that gains us is the ability to add parameters in one place that can apply to multiple different elements inside of the blueprint. So in this case, it would be a single server tier, but I can set that one single blueprint parameter at the server tier level. So maybe something like a hostname template. I can set this at the blueprint level, and then I can have my hostname template for the blueprint populate down to all of my servers that are being built under the build tier. So if I added another server here, or even some actions, these blueprint level parameters, if they're set to a destination of both, would apply to all of the different the different build items inside of the blueprint. Those parameters would propagate down. So it allows you to set things in one place at the top level. It also would, I would use this in the case of we needed a specific parameter to be used on the blueprint versus on the environment. Something that might be more blueprint specific versus environment specific. So just a little bit more flexibility that's available when you're leveraging blueprints that don't create resources inside of CloudBolt. The next update that we're going to cover is the ability now to use custom forms with blueprint level parameters as well. So I have this blueprint params kind of test blueprint. There's a very simple action in here. You'll notice there's one single input that I'm declaring input 1. So this is my plugin level parameter that we'll be pulling in. But I also want to notice this is set to, I did set it to a resource type. I could also have this set to none. Why don't we do none? I think that makes a little more sense based off of our last update that we spoke through. That's not what I wanted. There we go. Okay, our blueprint params is now updated to a none resource type. So we have our parameters here. Let's go ahead and add a parameter at this level. Maybe we just do something simple like maybe domain to join, really doesn't matter. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that domain to join parameter and we're going to show that it gets populated into our custom form. So if we come over to our custom form, we'll give this a second to load. And then what we're going to do is we're going to generate the default form in CloudBolt. It turns out I selected the wrong parameter. The one I selected was of a type LDAP utility, and it's not something that is JSON serializable. So don't use the domain to join parameter at your blueprint level. So I'm using the new password parameter now. It's going to be a type of password. So now if I come over to my custom field, notice it actually does load the screen. Let's go ahead and generate default form. So our default form has been created. And what we should see here is we have now a section for blueprint parameters. It includes the new password parameter here in the custom form. And so you see the mapping up top here. It also is an input type of password. So when I go to input anything into this field, it's going to be masked from the end user. And then my test action is a completely separate page. So this should be a 3-page blueprint. If I go to my preview for custom forms, I can do admins, notice password field. Then I can go next and I can put in input 1. The other thing that we could do here, because custom forms, and one of the big use cases here is not having multiple tabs, I can actually drag, that test action over to the previous page and get rid of this page altogether, where, we can unify all of our inputs on one single pane of glass. So that's not new, just something I thought I'd call out since we were here. But using blueprint level parameters now inside of custom forms is available in this new release of CloudBolt. One of the other things that we've added in 2023.3 is the ability in CloudBolt from the catalog management page under our admin section to go into a specific category. And if we edit this, you'll notice these are all kind of new, all of these different icons here. But we can now edit these categories to assign or remove multiple blueprints at once. Before you had to go into each of the individual blueprints, but now from the catalog management page kind of centralizes the management for all of those kinds of things. I believe this image capability is also new for the categories as well. I don't recall seeing that before. So a couple of new things around catalog management, just making this a little more modern looking, a little more user friendly for your end users to be able to consume content from the CloudBolt catalog. As far as build items in CloudBolt, one of the things that we added in this latest release is just change some of the default behavior that you might want to be aware of. When you're leveraging a build item in CloudBolt, the show on order form defaults now to if needed. Before it was always. So what would happen, and we would have things that already had values assigned on server tiers. They would still show tabs in the order form. It just kind of cluttered the user experience. So just a default behavior change so that when we add additional build items, it will always default to if needed. You can always toggle this back to always if you would like your users to see the different elements inside of the blueprint that they're ordering. For the next two capabilities we're covering, we're back to the catalog management page. Apologies, the release notes were just different capabilities were in different places in the release notes. So a little bit jumbled up, but that's okay. So the next two capabilities really relate to category management inside of catalog management. The first one would be the ability to, if we were to delete a parent category, you can now select the ability to also delete the subcategory. Before, you'd have to delete all of the subcategories before you could delete the parent category. It's just kind of a pain. So just a little bit of added convenience for our customers. The next step, though, or the next piece to this is the ability to export or download these categories. And then what we have is a zip file that contains all of that. And you can take, it looks like it's just a JSON for the configuration for each of those. Let's just show what this looks like real quick. Looks like it's pretty simple. It will export the children as well as the parent as part of a JSON formatted file. And if I were to take that zip file, I can now also upload additional categories from other instances of CloudBolt. So just a little bit of added convenience when you're moving content between different CloudBolt instances. The next three components that we're going to be covering are going to be really UI enhancements. As far as like it looks better, it's smoother, it's cleaner for administrative level viewers in CloudBolt. So the first thing and my biggest concern when I first saw this release is there's no more admin tabs. So as an administrator, please recognize going into this release that your admin tab has actually been kind of put into this gear over here to the top right. It's the same admin tab. We just cleared up a little bit of real estate on the left-hand side. I'm still working on getting used to this being in a different position after working with it there for so many months and years. But now from here, we can navigate to our admin tab here, which brings me to the second UI enhancement, which is our administration page has now been updated to have just more modern elements. So you'll notice a different look and feel when you come in and look at the admin page. You can now collapse these different categories for things. The search is still here, but just enhancing the look and feel for administrators. The last piece to this is really the content library in CloudBolt has been updated to have an updated user interface as well. You'll notice a lot of these things, so you can still search through here. You can still do some different sorting capabilities, but just a faster experience, a more modern looking experience around the content library as far as like sorting and being able to organize and capture what content and find the content that you're trying to find inside of the content library. Thank you for taking the time today to cover the releases in the 2023.3 release of CloudBolt. We really appreciate that you spent some time with us today. If you have any questions regarding any of the features or anything else that was covered in this video today, or really anything at all as it relates to CloudBolt, please reach out to your account team. We're always happy to provide answers and dive a little bit deeper if needed. So thanks again, and happy automating with CloudBolt.